Manila, January 1942. The air smells of smoke and rot. The university campus has been transformed overnight. What was once a place of learning, where young Filipinos studied medicine and law under Spanish arches, is now a sprawling internment camp. Santo Tomas. 3,000 souls behind wire. Among them, American soldiers. Men who fought at Bataan who survived the march, who arrived here hollow-eyed and trembling. They lie on concrete floors, burning with fever, malaria, dysentery. Wounds turn septic in the tropical heat. A young Japanese nurse stands at the entrance to the makeshift hospital ward. She is 24 years old. Her name is Yamada Keiko, though in the camp they will call her simply the nurse. She wears the white uniform of the Imperial Japanese Army Nursing Corps. The red cross on her armband is barely visible beneath the dust. She was trained in Tokyo at the Red Cross Hospital, where she learned to wrap bandages with precision, to ease pain, to preserve life. She took an oath. To heal, to serve, to comfort the sick regardless of who they were. But that was before the war came. Now she stands in a prison, and the sick are enemies. The men she is meant to heal are Americans. The enemy. Those who bombed Japanese cities, who killed Japanese soldiers, who stand between the empire and its destiny. Her superiors have made it clear. Medical care is a privilege, not a right. Food is scarce. Medicine, even scarcer. The Americans will receive the minimum necessary to keep them alive for labor, nothing more. She watches a soldier vomit into a bucket. He cannot be more than 20. His dog tags read, Wilson, Thomas J. He shivers despite the heat, his lips cracked and bleeding. The Japanese guards laugh at him. One spits near his feet. Keiko feels something twist inside her chest, something she has been taught to ignore. Something dangerous. Compassion. The hospital where Keiko trained had marble floors and electric lights, clean white walls, the smell of antiseptic, rows of beds with crisp sheets. Nurses moved like ghosts through the wards, their footsteps silent, their touch gentle. Her instructors had been stern but fair. A nurse serves life, they told her. In the face of suffering, there is no nationality. There is only the patient and the healer. It was a Western idea, imported with Western medicine, Florence Nightingale, Clara Barton, the Red Cross. The notion that healing transcends politics, that mercy has no borders. But Japan was changing. By the time Keiko graduated in 1940, the curriculum had shifted. New lessons, new priorities, Bushido, the warrior code, honor through death, shame through surrender. The instructors spoke less of compassion and more of duty. Duty to the emperor. Duty to the nation. Duty to purify Asia of Western influence. When the war began, Keiko was among hundreds of young nurses mobilized for service. They were sent to field hospitals in China, in Southeast Asia, in the Pacific Islands. They treated wounded soldiers. They wrote letters for the dying. They burned the dead, and they were taught to hate the Americans, hate the British, hate all who stood against Japan's rightful place in the world. Manila was supposed to be easy. The city fell quickly. The Americans retreated by January. The Japanese controlled the archipelago. The war, they were told, was nearly over, but the camps filled with prisoners. More than the Japanese had anticipated, more than they could feed, more than they wanted to acknowledge. At Santo Tomas, the commandant was a former schoolteacher named Kodaki. He was not cruel by nature, he was simply indifferent. The Americans were beneath his concern. They had surrendered. They had chosen dishonor. Let them suffer the consequences. Keiko's role was simple. Distribute medicine as ordered, change bandages when necessary, report any deaths. Do not waste resources, do not show favoritism, do not forget that these men are the enemy. But on her third day in the camp, something happened. A prisoner collapsed during roll call. Heat exhaustion. The guards dragged him to the shade and left him. No water, no treatment, just left him to recover or die. Keiko was passing nearby. She stopped. She looked at the man. He was perhaps 40, gray at the temples, breathing in shallow gasps. She glanced around, no guards watching, no officers nearby. She knelt beside him, opened her canteen, lifted his head, poured water into his mouth. He coughed, swallowed, opened his eyes. Thank you, he whispered in English. She did not respond. She stood, walked away quickly, her heart pounding. That night she could not sleep. She had disobeyed orders. She had shown mercy to an enemy. If anyone had seen, she could be reprimanded, reassigned, shamed. But all she could think about was the look in the man's eyes when he drank that water. Gratitude, relief, humanity. And for the first time since arriving in Manila, Keiko felt something other than numbness. She felt like a nurse again. The camp pharmacy was a single room in the education building, locked, guarded, inventoried daily. Inside, quinine for malaria, sulfa drugs for infection, morphine for pain. Enough to save lives, not enough to save all of them. The chief medical officer was a Japanese army doctor named Lieutenant Tanaka. He was efficient, methodical, and pitiless. He distributed medicine according to a strict formula: Japanese soldiers first, then Japanese civilians, then Korean laborers, then Filipino collaborators, and finally, if anything remained, American prisoners. Most days, nothing remained. Keiko watched prisoners die of diseases that could have been cured. She watched wounds fester that could have been cleaned. She watched men scream through the night because there was no morphine to ease their agony. The American doctors in the camp did what they could. They improvised. They begged. They stole scraps of cloth for bandages, boiled water in rusty cans, fashioned splints from broken furniture. One of them was a captain named Richard Hayes, 36 years old, a surgeon from Ohio. He had been captured on Corregidor. He worked 16-hour days in the makeshift hospital ward, treating men with nothing but determination and prayer. Keiko saw him argue with Lieutenant Tanaka, pleading for more medicine, more supplies, anything. Tanaka refused. Your men surrendered, Captain. They chose this fate. Medicine is for those who still serve the Emperor. Hayes did not respond. He simply returned to his patients. Keiko watched him clean a wound with boiled water and strips of torn cloth, whispering reassurances to a soldier who would likely be dead by morning. That night, Keiko made her decision. She waited until after midnight. The guards changed shifts at 2 a.m., leaving a brief window of inattention. She had observed this for days, waiting, planning. She moved silently through the darkened building. The pharmacy door was locked, but she had watched Tanaka hide the key. She retrieved it, opened the door, slipped inside. Her hands trembled as she filled her pockets. 3 vials of quinine, 2 packets of sulfa powder, 1 small bottle of iodine. Not much, but enough. She locked the door behind her, replaced the key, returned to her quarters, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The next morning, during her rounds, she passed Captain Hayes. She did not speak. She simply let a small bundle wrapped in cloth slip from her hand into his as she walked by. He caught it, looked up at her. Their eyes met for half a second. Then she was gone. That evening, 2 American prisoners who would have died lived instead, and Keiko became a thief. Spring 1942. The monsoon season arrived, bringing torrential rains and swarms of mosquitoes. Malaria swept through Santo Tomas like wildfire. The death rate tripled. Bodies were removed from the camp at dawn, loaded onto carts, taken to mass graves on the outskirts of Manila. The Japanese authorities did not care. Let the Americans die. More room, less food needed, fewer mouths to feed when supplies grew thin. But Keiko cared. She had been stealing medicine for 2 months now. Small amounts. Careful, never enough to be noticed in the daily inventory. A vial here, a packet there, enough to make a difference. She developed a system. She would approach the American hospital ward as if on official inspection. She would criticize their procedures, their cleanliness, their organization, all in Japanese, so the guards would hear her scolding the prisoners. But in the moments when no one was watching, she would leave small packages hidden in rolled bandages, tucked behind loose bricks, concealed in emptied medicine bottles. Captain Hayes learned to anticipate her visits. He would create diversions, arguments among the prisoners, sudden medical emergencies, to draw the guards' attention elsewhere. In those brief windows, Keiko would make her drops. They never spoke directly, too dangerous, but they developed a language of glances and gestures. A slight nod meant medicine delivered. A raised eyebrow meant danger nearby. A quick shake of the head meant try again tomorrow. It was espionage masquerading as medical care. Other nurses noticed her strange behavior. Why did she visit the American ward so often? Why did she seem troubled by their suffering? Was she not loyal? One nurse, older and bitter, began to watch her closely. Keiko felt the scrutiny like a weight on her shoulders. She became more cautious, more paranoid. Then came the day she almost got caught. Lieutenant Tanaka decided to conduct a surprise inspection of the pharmacy. Keiko had taken medicine the night before. She had been careless, left a small disorder in the supply cabinets. Tanaka noticed immediately 3 vials of quinine missing. He counted again, recounted. His face darkened. "Someone has been stealing," he announced at the morning staff meeting. "This is treason. Whoever is responsible will face a court-martial." He launched an investigation, interrogated the guards, questioned the medical staff, searched quarters. Keiko waited for the knock on her door, waited to be arrested, waited for her life to end, but it never came. A young Japanese private confessed to the theft. He claimed he had taken the medicine to sell on the black market. He was beaten, dishonorably discharged, and sent to a labor camp. Keiko never learned if he was truly guilty or if he had taken the blame to protect someone else. Perhaps he had seen her. Perhaps he knew she never had the chance to ask. But his sacrifice gave her time, time to continue, time to save more lives. And so she did. Summer, 1943. The war was turning. American forces were advancing across the Pacific, island by island, battle by battle. The Japanese Empire was beginning to crack. But in Santo Tomas, the prisoners knew nothing of this. They lived in a world of rumor and hope. Guards whispered of defeats disguised as victories. Prisoners clung to fragments of news smuggled in by Filipino civilians. Conditions worsened. Food rations were cut. Medicine supplies dwindled. The death rate climbed again. Keiko was exhausted. She had been stealing and smuggling for nearly 2 years. The stress had hollowed her out. She slept little, ate less. Her hands shook constantly now from fear or fatigue or both, and she was beginning to understand the price of compassion. Every vial of quinine she stole meant a Japanese soldier somewhere went without. Every packet of sulfa powder she smuggled meant a Japanese civilian in the city might die of infection. She was betraying her own people to save the enemy. The realization kept her awake at night. Who was she to decide who lived and who died? Who was she to violate orders, to undermine the war effort, to place American lives above Japanese lives? She thought of her brother, fighting somewhere in Burma. What if he needed medicine and there was none because someone like her had stolen it? What if he died because of choices like the ones she was making? The guilt was overwhelming. But then she would see Captain Hayes working through the night to save a dying soldier. She would see prisoners sharing their meager rations with the weakest among them. She would see men who had every reason to hate the Japanese treating her with quiet respect. And she would remember why she became a nurse. Not to serve nations or emperors or ideologies. To serve life. One afternoon, an American prisoner was brought to the hospital ward, shot while trying to escape, bleeding out. Captain Hayes worked frantically to save him, but the bullet had severed an artery. "I need plasma," Hayes said desperately. "He'll die without it." There was no plasma, not for prisoners. Keiko watched the young man's life drain away. 21 years old. From Kansas, he called for his mother as he died. That night, Keiko broke into Lieutenant Tanaka's personal supply locker. She knew it was reckless, knew it could mean her death, but she took 2 units of plasma anyway. The next day, another wounded prisoner came in. This time, Captain Hayes had what he needed. The man lived, and Keiko accepted that she might not. October 1944. American bombers appeared in the skies over Manila. The prisoners cheered, the guards panicked. The war had come home. The Japanese commandant ordered all prisoners to remain inside blackout procedures. No lights, no movement after dark. Anyone caught outside would be shot. Supplies into the camp stopped almost entirely. The guards were hungry too. Everyone was hungry. Keiko could no longer steal medicine because there was no medicine to steal. The pharmacy was empty. Even the Japanese soldiers were dying of preventable diseases now. Manila was collapsing. The empire was collapsing. And in the chaos, old hatreds surfaced. Some of the guards, facing inevitable defeat, took out their rage on the prisoners. Beatings increased. Executions for minor infractions became common. The camp descended into a kind of savage waiting. Keiko tried to intervene when she could. A word to a guard. A plea for mercy. Sometimes it worked. Often it didn't. One night, 3 American prisoners were dragged from their barracks, accused of plotting escape. They were tied to posts in the courtyard. The commandant assembled the entire camp to witness their execution. Keiko watched from the edge of the crowd. One of the condemned men was someone she had saved. A soldier named Miller. She had given him quinine when he was near death from malaria. He had lived. He had thanked her with his eyes. Now he was about to die anyway. The firing squad raised their rifles. Keiko stepped forward. She didn't plan to. She didn't think. She just moved. "Wait," she said in Japanese. Everyone turned to stare at her. The commandant's face twisted in fury. "What is the meaning of this?" "They are sick," she lied. "Executing sick men is dishonorable. Let them die of their illness. Do not waste bullets." It was a desperate gambit, an insane risk. The commandant studied her. Long seconds passed. Then he laughed. "Take them back. Let disease do what we would have done." The prisoners were returned to the barracks. They would live a few more days. Miller looked at Keiko as the guards dragged him away. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." That night, the older nurse who had been watching Keiko for years finally confronted her. "I know what you've been doing," she said quietly. "I've known for a long time." Keiko said nothing. "I should report you. You're a traitor. You're helping the enemy. You deserve to die." Silence. "But I won't," the older nurse continued. "Because I've seen what you've seen. I've felt what you've felt, and I'm tired of all this death." She walked away, leaving Keiko standing alone in the darkness. 2 women who should have been enemies, bound by a shared exhaustion with war. February 3rd, 1945. 8:40 p.m. The sound of tank treads on cobblestone. The crack of rifle fire. Shouting in English. The Americans had arrived. Santo Tomas erupted in chaos. Prisoners screamed with joy. Japanese guards fled or fought. The education building caught fire. Smoke poured into the night sky. Keiko stood in the hospital ward, surrounded by the sick and dying. American tanks had broken through the perimeter. Liberation was minutes away. But she knew what liberation meant for her. She was the enemy. She wore the uniform of the Imperial Japanese Army. She had been part of the occupation, part of the machine that had imprisoned and starved these men. The fact that she had helped them secretly would mean nothing to the liberating soldiers. She would be seen as an oppressor, a captor. A target. Captain Hayes appeared at her side. "You need to hide," he said urgently. "When our boys come through here, they won't ask questions." "I know," she said quietly. "Come with me." He led her to a storage room at the back of the ward, told her to stay there, to stay silent. "Why are you protecting me?" she asked. "Because you protected us," he said simply. "Because you're the reason some of these men are still alive." He locked her in. From inside, she could hear the sounds of the camp being liberated. Cheering. Crying. The occasional burst of gunfire. Hours passed. Finally, the door opened. Captain Hayes stood there, alongside an American officer. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Morrison," Hayes said. "I've explained the situation." Morrison studied Keiko. "You're the nurse who stole medicine for our men?" She nodded. "You saved American lives?" "I tried to save all lives," she said. Morrison exchanged a glance with Hayes. Then he made a decision. "You'll be taken into custody as a prisoner of war, but I'll make sure your actions are noted in the official record. You'll be treated fairly." "Thank you," Keiko whispered. As she was led away, prisoners lined the corridor, men she had helped, men whose lives she had saved. They stood in respectful silence as she passed. One man stepped forward. It was Miller, the soldier she had saved from execution. He was emaciated, barely able to stand, but he saluted her. "Ma'am," he said, "thank you for everything." Others joined him, a silent salute to the enemy who had been their ally. Keiko felt tears on her face for the first time in years. Yamada Keiko was held in American custody for 6 months. Questioned, investigated. Her story verified through testimony from dozens of former prisoners. In August 1945, Japan surrendered. The war was over. Keiko was repatriated to Japan in late 1945. She returned to a country in ruins. Tokyo was ash, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki were graves. The empire was dead. She tried to resume nursing, but found she could not. The memories were too heavy, the guilt too great. She had saved American lives, but she had also worn the uniform of an army that had committed atrocities. She had been part of a system that had caused immense suffering. There was no easy redemption for that. She moved to a small village in the mountains, lived quietly, spoke rarely of the war. In 1952, Captain Richard Hayes found her. He had spent 7 years searching. He wanted to thank her in person, to tell her that because of her courage, 17 men who would have died had lived to go home, 17 fathers, 17 sons, 17 husbands, 17 families whole instead of broken. They sat together in her small house, drinking tea, speaking through a translator. Two people who had once been enemies, who had once shared a secret war within a war. "Why did you do it?" Hayes asked. "You could have been executed. Why risk everything?" Keiko was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Because I took an oath. To heal. To serve life. War does not cancel oaths." Hayes returned to America, but he never forgot. In 1965, he published a memoir about his time as a prisoner of war. An entire chapter was dedicated to the Japanese nurse who had risked her life to save American soldiers. The book was translated into Japanese. Keiko received dozens of letters. Some praised her. Some condemned her as a traitor. She responded to none of them. She lived until 1987, 42 years after the war ended. She never married, never had children. She carried the war with her until the end. But before she died, she gave one final interview to a young Japanese journalist. "Do you regret what you did?" the journalist asked. Keiko looked out the window at the mountains. The same mountains she had looked at for 40 years. "I regret the war," she said. "I regret all the death. I regret that I could not save more." She paused. "But I do not regret remembering that even enemies are human, that mercy does not belong to any nation, that a nurse's duty is to life, not to flags." The journalist asked what she wanted people to remember about the war. Keiko was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That it is easy to hate, that it is easy to dehumanize, that it is easy to forget that the enemy also bleeds, also suffers, also loves and fears and hopes, and that in the darkest times, the smallest acts of compassion matter most." She died 3 weeks later. Her ashes were scattered in the mountains. Today, in a small park in Manila, there is a memorial to the prisoners of Santo Tomas. Among the names of the liberators and the liberated, there is a small plaque. It reads, "In memory of those who, even in the depths of war, chose mercy over hatred, healing over harm, and humanity over ideology." No name is listed, but those who know the story understand. It is for the nurse who stole medicine, the enemy who became a savior, the woman who proved that even in hell, compassion can survive.